This is the E of real estate. My name is Rene Stevens, and I'm very honored to have today as guest Dr. Ibrahim Karim from Cairo. Welcome. Dr. Ibrahim Karim is a truly Renaissance man who combines science and spirituality in a daily applicable way. And he was born in Cairo. He studied architecture at the famous Technical University in Zurich, Switzerland, where he got his master degree in architecture and also his doctor degree in architecture and town planning. He also obtained a PhD in tourist planning. For many years, Dr. Karim held several advisory positions in Egypt to the ministers of health, culture, tourism, and also of scientific research. Besides architecture, he practiced also interior design and furniture, and also a product design with a new environmental worldview. We will come into that later. He is founder of BioGeometry, the science of subtle energy quality in a new paradigm in architecture and industrial design, and to restore harmony to our modern technology environments. He is holder of numerous patents and intellectual property registrations in the field of biogeometry. He teaches and supervises postgraduate studies on the applications of the science of biogeometry in different fields of architecture, urban and tourist planning, landscape design, industrial design, textile and fashion design, and even animal farming and agriculture. He wrote two English books, Back to A, Future to Mankind. That is also translated in Chinese and Italian, and as I understood, 5 more languages are upcoming. And the other important book in English language is Biogeometry Signatures, harmonizing the body's subtle energies exchange with the environment. And he's also working on several new books. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that later on. Dr. Karim's worldview combines science and spirituality in a new, unified, harmonious worldview. And that is based on a new multidimensional physics of quality, actually a science that he developed himself. The practicality of his worldview has been demonstrated in the environmental solutions that biogeometry provides in many areas of life. And we will come to that in this interview. So, Ibrahim, a very impressive CV, and this is only a short version. I'm really, really grateful to have you on our show. Welcome.
Well, hello, Rene. It's a pleasure being with you. And thank you for this long CV. You didn't need to go so much into it.
Oh, well, what I read about you and what I saw on YouTube, you really deserve this.
Thank you, Rene.
You will come into that in this interview. It's really amazing. I'm an architect myself, as you know, so I recognize many, many things that you are doing. And for me, it's eye-opening that, wow, you can combine it in one system. This is really, really something. It took you, as I understood, about 45 years to do this odyssey into uncharted territory of harmonizing and balancing resonance in environment and the humans, animals, and plants in it. And in this podcast, I would like to focus on the application of biogeometry in the learn and work environment. So in universities, as a resonance in action. And how can rethinking of a university campus have a positive impact on study outcomes and the user experience? And how can a learning environment, and in my definition that consists of 3 parts. So there's the physical part, so the buildings and the location and the rooms in the building, but also the digital part, so the digital work environment, the digital workplace, and all the Wi-Fi and all the things that go with it. And last but not least, the social part. So Also, we human beings have an etheric field and influence each other and are influenced by the other two environment components. I read some amazing stuff about your work. You are recognized and honored by several institutions for your work in the environment. And one of the most outstanding ones is your work in Switzerland, in Hamburg and Hirschberg. And they even choose you as the Man of the Year by the magazine.
Oh yes, you found that?
Yeah, I found that. And I even saw that they gave you a nickname, Strahleman, in English, something
yes.
like Radiation Man.
Yeah.
So amazing. And the citizens of these two towns in Switzerland, they perceived your interventions as miracles. And the article called you for that Karim from Wonderland or from
yes.
Miracle Land.
I see you read some of the articles in Switzerland.
Oh yeah, all of them.
Yes.
Those that I could find, I read. Really amazing, because it's a hot topic, 5G and specific, but electrosmog and electromagnetic radiation as a total area. I'm wondering, Karim, what got you into this field of creating so-called miracles?
Well, let me start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I will quote in an English translation 2 lines from one of the Sufi poets called Omar Khayyam. And those lines, I can sum them up in 2 lines. It says, "The divine finger that writes and having writ, nor all thy piety, nor all thy wit, shall change a single word of it." Now he is speaking about the divine finger writing and drawing all the shapes in nature and everything that exists and will exist. So I look at those lines and then I ask myself, if we are living in a country that speaks only English, or let's say in Finland you're speaking only Finnish, and you couldn't speak the language of the country, you'd be pretty useless in the society if you don't speak their language. So imagine we are living in nature and there's a divine pen writing and drawing all those shapes in nature, all those nice trees and forests and even animals and all the nice things in nature. It's the writing of a divine pen. And nobody reads, we cannot read. So we are living in nature and cannot read the language of nature. What we are doing is we are speaking to ourselves. Human is speaking to human. That's the only language we understand. And you cannot live in an environment without understanding its language. So biogeometry is a new science that strives to, let's say, to understand the language of nature and the forming process in nature, how nature forms things. So in order to understand that, let's take the word biogeometry. Geometry is geo and metry. Metry means measurement. And geo means the earth. So geometry is the measurement of the earth. The word comes from the ancient Egyptians that they used to measure or survey the land every year after the flood of the Nile, when the nice silt came and covered all the land. And when the Nile receded, the water receded, you had to divide the parcels again so that every farmer gets back his parcels. So they surveyed every parcel from, Upper Egypt to Lower Egypt, that's more than 1,000 kilometers. Every parcel on the Nile, they used to survey it. And that means measurements in the land. And from that, we know, for example, the Pythagorean triangle, the triangle of 90 degrees, 3, 4, and 5. They got a rope in those dimensions in order to get the exact 90 degrees for every parcel. So they called Egypt, one of the names for Egypt is the surveyed land. Now, so that is the meaning of geometry, is surveying of the earth. Now, I added bio to it because I didn't want just to measure the earth. No, I look at the earth like a living entity. The earth is alive, and this life, we refer to it as bio. Bio means the energy of life, the life force. So I added bio to geometry in order to have a science that deals with the life force of this planet we're in, of which we are also part, because the planet is a living entity, and we are like bacteria within this living entity. We don't live on the earth, we live in the earth, because the atmosphere is part of the earth. So we live in the earth. Now, like any cells that live in a larger body, the bioenergy or the life force of our systems is actually the life force of the earth. So we are like a drop in the ocean that gets its water from the ocean. We shouldn't think that the drop is separate from the ocean. And starting with this, we understood now that if we are part of the earth, we are part of the environment, then we should at least understand the language of nature. And from there, we started developing biogeometry. And to understand the language of nature, nature creates living things. Everything in nature is alive. Everything in nature has life force in it, has this bioforce in it. And we are also parts of nature, the design of the human body and every other species, we have the life force in us. Yet we come and in our great civilization, we start producing products and putting them out in nature that do not have life force in them. And that's a big problem. We're polluting nature with things that are not alive. And we think, well, we are trying to reach life through artificial intelligence, for example. Now, you can try to simulate life through artificial intelligence, but you will never create it. And even if you reach the best computers in the world with artificial intelligence, they will become self-developing in such a way that they will not need us. And then they will take their decisions. And when they take their decisions, we will notice that they only simulate life, but they are not alive because they will not have any conscience. They will not really do things according to conscience. They will actually do things according to what is most efficient. So computers running the earth, if they think that reducing humanity by a third, for example, would be good for the rest of humanity, then, and they think that's the, the best solution, they will go and do it. They have no conscience. So understanding that, you understand you cannot create life. Well, what do? How does nature do it? Nature accesses life from a higher dimension. You see, life exists as a life force, and all the shapes that you find in nature are governed from a higher level through certain patterns, templates that come into the physical dimension through vortices or centers of energy that come into the physical dimension, and in them we have all the laws of nature that govern the evolution and growth of everything in nature. So nature brings life into matter. It accesses life into matter. Life is out there. It's, you know, when we say we want to make life through artificial intelligence, it's like, imagine a fish wanting to make water. I mean, it's already living in water.
Mm.
What's a fish trying to make water? Now, we are trying to make life. We are living in a sea of life. The whole universe is based in a living background, a living force.
Mm-hmm.
So designing should be made like the forming process of nature. We should design our things in order to access and contain this life force. This seems a bit strange to think about. How can we design something and make it connect to life force? Well, the first thing, let us look at the human body, for example. The human body is a container, and every container should be shaped in order to contain what's in it. So you can make a container that is shaped, for example, to contain water or food. So you make it in a sort of a concave like this thing to contain things in it. But what if you want to contain subtle energy levels, like life force, like emotional, like mental levels? If you want to contain those levels, you cannot use physical means to contain subtle energy levels. The only way to contain them is through resonance, entering into resonance with them, and resonance between any two vibrations or any two fields will actually make a copy of every field in both of them. So to contain them, you bring them into the system through resonance. Now, how does this resonance occur? Mm-hmm. Through the shape of the human body. The human body is shaped in every detail in order to contain all the levels of all the functions it should have. And we make very interesting experiments to prove that. We bring a wooden statue, you know, the wooden artist statues. We bring a wooden statue like that, and we take the wooden statue and position the hands in different positions, and we can actually, on the statue that has a human shape, you can find the energy centers, you know, that we call the chakras. The chakras can be found on a statue. But then the question is, if the statue displays chakras that we can measure, then it must have life force in it. How can a statue have life force? It has life force through shape. Now, on the physical level, the statue will not move, will not grow, but it carries the whole life force that it can transmit to a human. And if we understand that, we will understand the secret behind many of the ancient statues that were designed in such a way to access the life force and transmit it. That is why ancient Egyptian statues, for example, have a stylized shape, because the stylized shapes, they are very near to the perfect templates from the archetypal level. So they get those templates, and even if they try to put the pharaoh's features in it, they keep that within the minimum in order not to distort the stylized, let's say, form of the statue. And those statues actually get the life force and transmit it to the community. So life force can be accessed even through dead matter or seemingly dead matter. Now, looking at that, so we want a science that brings life force into whatever the human being produces. If we look at those ancient statues, we will find that they were placed on certain sacred power spots. And those sacred power spots has a sort of a vortex that connects the earth and higher dimensions. Now, if we go back to the beginning of humanity, we find that since the dawn of humanity, they looked at the animals, and the animals have a way of finding the sacred power spots. Pigeons, for example, they fly in a V-shaped formation, and on a sacred power spot, they start turning circles, and then after that, they continue in their V formation. So you know that now they're on a sacred power spot. Now, those power spots were strong energy power spots. The word sacred comes, it's humanity that looks at them, that makes them sacred for humanity. Now, how do they make them sacred? They watch the animals interact with those power spots. Those sacred power spots have underground water streams crossing at certain angles that produce a stream coming out of the earth, and the water in this stream stays fresh forever. It doesn't salinate with time. It stays fresh, and it has healing properties in those spots. The crossing of angles actually produces a vortex. When two lines cross at their crossing point, they produce a vortex in this area, and then you have a sacred power spot. Now, in those sacred power spots, early humans, they were like animals. They used to go there like the animals did. And in the sacred power spots, they found that there is some multidimensional communications to higher levels. They found that maybe oracles or light beings like angels, things like that, started to connect with them in those areas. So that means those areas became areas of illumination. At the same time, they became areas of healing. And since they connected to higher dimensions, those areas also became areas of burial. So to the first humans, the sacred power spot became the most important factor in the whole history of humanity, is the sacred power spot from the beginning. Because after that, they used to plan cities according to sacred power spots. Throughout history, sacred power spots played an important role in beliefs, in religions, and all that. Now, what did they do with the first power spot? They found that the energy of that power spot is so important in their lives, and it gives them this communication and health and all that, that they wanted to amplify it. They found that the first small granite stones, let's say very dense stones, radiated more of this energy than soft stones or mud. So they went to a lot of trouble getting big boulders, megalithic, maybe 40-ton stones from faraway places. They quarried them from mountains, put them on sledges, and brought them all the way, sometimes 200-300 kilometers. And in Egypt, it was 500 kilometers, bringing granite shapes from the south to the north. And then they erected those big megalithic stones on the power spots. That's what we call menhirs today. So menhirs are here to mark a power spot, but at the same time to radiate its energy in the environment. If we look at the simple erection of a menhir, we can say this is actually the beginning of true architecture. Because imagine, first you identify a stone, that means material knowledge. But material knowledge even deeper than what we have today, because material knowledge in relation to subtle energy. Now, you have material knowledge, and then you go and quarry the stone from a mountain or something. So you have quarrying the material. Then you take this huge 40-ton stones, you cut trees and make rollers or sledges, put the stone on it, and keep rolling it on the land till you come to a river. You take those same trees, make a raft, and put it on the raft till you reach the nearest spot you're area of the power spot. Then you take it again on land, and you take it there, and then you make a hole, and then erect a 40-ton stone. Imagine you erect it so that it falls into the hole, and then you have the men here. So if you take all that, it is material knowledge, it's erection, it's knowledge. You can say this is really the beginning of architecture. Now, this concept developed later in ancient Egypt as the obelisk. Now, they found that by bringing certain dimensions and certain shapes, they could amplify the energy even more. But there's always the same thing. It had to be on a sacred power spot to radiate that energy. So when they built the archetypal statues that we spoke about earlier, they always placed them on such spots that had this energy connecting the earth to the sky. That means the life force. So what the monuments became full of life force that they accessed. Now, a bit later, they built 2 of those megalithic stones and put one on it in the shape of an arc, you know, an archway. And then, strangely enough, all of the archways are oriented towards the east, so east-west. So I kept measuring this shape. What's shape of an arc? If I turn it east-west, I found that in the east-west direction, it seems to radiate along the direction all the way to the east horizon, all the way to the west horizon, opens a path of radiation. So when they put those stones on the sacred power spot, they radiated the energy of the power spot to reach the rising and the setting of the sun. That means they connected the sacred energy to the life cycle, you know, of the earth. Now this megalithic gate, later they covered it with mud to make it like a hill on it, which later became a pyramid. So the essence of a pyramid is actually this chamber, this holy of holies. Had to be in granite, had to be oriented towards the east. That's the essence of all basilicas, of all temples, of all things throughout history. It was actually this interaction with the sacred power spots. So I started thinking, okay, first of all, I need to understand, as a professor of architecture teaching the history of architecture, we keep teaching the material aspects, the style, you know, the Gothic style, the Romanesque style, and we keep teaching this aspect and the social aspects, the material aspects and all that. But we don't have an idea about why is this church or this temple placed in this spot. If we dig deeper beside the spot, maybe 10 meters deeper, we find traces of an ancient building, of an older civilization. We go another 10 meters, we find another building from an older civilization. So it seems through maybe 5,000 to 6,000 years of history, humanity was building always on the same spots, Okay, so now, if we look at this ancient gate that we call dolmen, this has become the Holy of Holies. And actually this relationship of the dolmen to the sacred power spots is the essence and the core of all sacred buildings. So when you look at the pyramids, people start discussing, when was it built? How was it built? Okay, that's very interesting. When was it built? How was it built? But maybe the pyramid you see in front of you is the last stage of humanity interacting with that spot for maybe 10,000 years earlier. That's why you find maybe in the rock bed under the pyramids, you find chambers that are carved in the rock. Maybe those chambers were done 10,000 years ago. We don't know. So the most important thing to know is the energy of the spot. That was the whole key in ancient civilizations, is interacting with this multidimensional gateway that took you to other dimensions. So the human being here lived in connection with the higher dimensions, so that all his actions and all his doings were full of life force. He connected to the life force. And this resonates with the body that has the chakras, that also has those vortices in every chakra that connects to the life force. So the whole idea was bringing the full life force into whatever humanity did. So the buildings or the products of humanity, whatever it was, they were actually accessing life force. Now, in biogeometry, I thought, now, how was this, how was this energy achieved somehow, or how was this vortex achieved? Is through angles of underwater streams. But I also knew from other studies that angles of underwater streams can make areas that produce cancer and things like that. So it could be harmful areas. So underwater stream crossings could cause cancer, or could cause very healthy connection to higher dimensions. So I thought, where was the key? So I thought the key was polarity and angles. And if the key here is polarity and angles, that comes right in our domains, yours and mine as architects,
yes,
you know.
Yes, indeed.
It comes right in our lab. So I said, here there must be a geometrical language that has to do with this. Now, first, I used some ancient sciences, I put them together to make a physics of quality that I could use to measure the quality of sacred power spots. So I studied Pythagorean harmonics, you know, harmonics of string harmonics, and I studied different forms of scientific forms of dowsing, that you used certain wavelengths of dowsing or wavelengths on strings. And then I combined universal harmonics with this dowsing, and in universal harmonics, I extended, imagine a musical instrument where every string is in resonance with one double or half its size. Imagine if I take this musical instrument and I extend it from one side to 0 and from the other side to infinity. That means everything in existence, it become one harmonic unity, will become connected in quality. So a science of quality can actually connect with everything in existence. So now I started using this science of quality to understand what are the qualities of the energy in sacred power spots. When I was able to determine that, I started developing a geometrical language that would reproduce the same quality as sacred power spots. Now I started developing the geometrical language. Once I got it, that I could reproduce that energy through angles and shapes, because you know that when light goes through a prism, it refracts in angles, and every angle is a color. So in a prism, you see the relationship between angles and qualities. So actually, angles are the components of shape. So you can say that shapes are frozen qualities anyhow. So shapes in nature are qualities. If they are connected to the sacred energy, they become living qualities.
So in the example of the prism, you say has different qualities. Actually,
Yes.
the colors have different qualities. And as we know, colors have different wavelength. So in that way, you can measure them.
Every wavelength breaks down in a different angle.
Indeed.
And when it breaks down in a different angle, now our brain when it sees the angles and the frequencies, it transforms the angles in the visual center in the brain into colors. And then you see the colors. So the colors are the brain's reaction to the angles. So actually, we could say that that every shape is radiating all kinds of colors, but it's on a, since it's not like sound. Sound has many octaves. Colors is only one octave. So shape radiates colors, but on other octaves that we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
But now, since we managed to find the language of shape that reproduces the energy of sacred power spots, then we can actually use shapes to amplify that energy. We can use shapes to store that energy or to radiate that energy. So now sacred energy quality becomes usable as we use energy in a quantitative way. So imagine now you can store qualities, you can radiate qualities, you can use them. Imagine a future where your fuel was qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have this language. We have achieved a very important step, that we can actually reproduce the energy of a power spot away from a power spot. So we become free, because let's say I want to build a house. Not every house, like a temple, I can choose a power spot to build it upon.
Mm-hmm.
But now with the BioGeometry language, I can create my own power spot. If I design a chair, I create the chair, has its own vortex, it's connected. So in a way, BioGeometry is a language that produces shapes that access the life force. So now we are imitating the language of nature. We're creating living forces. Now, why is that of great importance today? Now, electrosmog, coming from the radiation that we have, electromagnetic radiation is filling the whole atmosphere, because we're in the age of information. Now, unfortunately, electromagnetic radiation has a dehydrating quality. It has a similar dehydrating quality that you find in ancient tombs and pyramids and all that. The same dehydrating quality exists in electricity. Now, dehydrating quality means what? Life force is in water. And when systems lose water through dehydration, they lose life force. When they lose life force, they lose immunity. Their immunity is reduced. So the age of information is actually reducing the immunity of all life species, of all life on Earth. Now, when you go to plants and trees and all that, and the immunity is reduced, the parasites increase, because the trees can't defend themselves anymore. The parasites increase. As a result, you start using more chemicals. So instead of just having electromagnetic pollution, now you have electromagnetic pollution and chemical pollution.
Yeah.
See? So now we have to restore the life force, the lost life force in our civilization. Otherwise, with the increase of electromagnetic radiation, we have a hidden time bomb in the age of information, that one day immune systems of life will collapse and the whole civilization is finished, and maybe a new species, new humanity start in the future. But we are in real danger because we do not want to address the problems of electromagnetic radiation.
When I may interrupt you for
yes, please do.
For a second, you could say that it is like the boiling frog syndrome. So
yes.
Most of us are not aware that the water is warming up to a degree that they cannot handle it anymore. And when we figure that out, it's too late. So luckily,
Yeah,
people like you are making us aware that that not only this is going on, but also that there is a solution for it.
Yes, and not only that, if we look at electromagnetic radiation, it's not only dehydrating life systems, it is actually contributing to global warming. Because if any wave moves, any motion like that, produces heat. You know, motion is heat. Like in a microwave, you heat your water in a microwave. So why are we not aware that all those electromagnetic waves in the atmosphere are actually contributing to heat? So we do not want to see that our civilization is contributing to global warming, and going from fossil fuels to electricity is not solving anything.
No.
Unless we have a science like biogeometry, we are actually making things worse. So if you're sitting in a car and you're sitting on a stack of batteries, with time, you will feel the difference in your health. Or if you're in a city that everything is run electrically. I mean, every day today we have 100 new inventions. We keep increasing all kinds of electromagnetic radiation on Earth. Now already 5G is causing problems. So we cannot stop that. And since we cannot stop it, we have a science like biogeometry that can actually take the energy, the harmonizing energy from higher dimension, the life force, and actually put it into electromagnetic radiation, putting it into the atmosphere. So at the end, you have a healing energy in the atmosphere. You have electromagnetic radiation like it carries pictures, sounds, and all that. Why not make it carry a healing spiritual energy full of life force? That actually our age of information would be increasing the life force of the Earth instead of depleting it.
Yeah.
And that is what biogeometry is doing. It wants to bring back the life force into all designs of humanity, into all its products. So in this way, we are actually following the principles of the forming process in nature. So we become part of nature. The human being and all what he is doing becomes in harmony with the nature he is living in. And all what I'm saying now seems, you could think that I'm not just philosophizing or saying things like that. From the first day we started biogeometry, maybe now it's about 47, 48 years ago. From the first day, we were providing solutions to problems that cannot be solved otherwise. When we did the Electrosmog problems in Switzerland, when I went to Hamburg, the government asked me to solve the problem because the people were demonstrating and they wanted to dynamite the towers, the mobile towers. So I asked them first, do you have a solution in mainstream science? Like you said before, I come from the ETH from Zurich.
Yeah.
So they know me there. They look at me as a Swiss scientist. So, okay, do we have in mainstream science a solution? And they said, no. If we had a solution, we wouldn't ask you to come. Okay, I said, okay, now, you want to cancel the effect of electromagnetic radiation on people. Well, I can tell you a very simple answer to that. Take away the cause that's causing the effect. They said, we didn't bring you to tell us that. We know that, but we want you to cancel the effect without taking away the cause, without taking away all the electric sources or electromagnetic sources. So I told them, is that logic? You know, I play with them a bit. And so they said, Ibrahim, we know you can do it in biogeometry, so please find a solution. So I said, okay. So now, when we installed our geometrical shapes, some very strange things happened, you know. 60% of all health symptoms, according to the study that Dr. Evangeli from the parliament and Bosco Buehler, another member of parliament, they did the study, the independent study. They found that 60% of health problems were reduced. Things like epilepsy, for example, vanished completely from the area. Many children had epilepsy, it vanished. Now, besides that, they found that the community had changed on the emotional, mental level. Because on a television program, when they were speaking about they were speaking about the miracle of Hamburg, look at all what happened to the cows. Migrating birds came back. The cows are now fertile again. The milk production is here. Plants are okay. The people are healthier. So they call that the miracle of Hamburg. The mayor came out and said, well, I would like to say something, but on a different scale than what you're saying. I'm speaking as the mayor of the community. I thank Dr. Karim for bringing peace to my community and for bringing back the church into our hearts. Now, why was that? Because when they did the first questionnaire, people sometimes said things that were not in the questionnaire. Like, for example, I am not enjoying life. People didn't have any problems, no monetary problems, no financial problems, nothing. Everything was perfect in their lives, but they didn't enjoy life. They had no taste for life. Or they said, I have no will. Or the people were aggressive with each other. You know, your dog goes into the neighbor's garden, there's a fight. They're aggressive. People in the streets were very aggressive with each other. Even in the homes, couples were fighting all the time. And so there was a lot of aggression going around. Now, with BioGeometry, all of a sudden, everything calmed down, and they found people walking in the street smiling at each other. The aggression had left the people. And when they came 10 days later and asked the same question to the people, they were astonished because the person would say, now I'm enjoying life. So they tell him, are you crazy? Last week you said you didn't enjoy it. He said, no, but now I'm enjoying it. How come now? He says like that. After Ibrahim came, now I'm enjoying life. And they noticed that all the people in those areas started calling me always by my first name. You know, in Switzerland, we always use family names. They use Dr. Karim or Mr. Karim. We always use family names in Europe. But those people there, they got so close to me that they are always referring me Ibrahim and laughing and joking and things like that. So the mayor, he looked at the people in the community and he found it very strange. Why are those people so happy all day? Peaceful, enjoying things. And that's what he said on TV. Something had changed. 1 year later, we had a conference in Hamburg. And the people came and said, look, Ibrahim, we have the right to know the type of energy you are using. So I said, well, I explained everything. So they said, yes, you explained everything like an engineer, very scientific, very good. But there's something more that you didn't explain. Are you afraid that somebody would say he's using some kind of spiritual energy or things like that? Why don't you tell us the truth? What kind of energy quality are you using? Because we know it is spiritual, because everything changed here. We live in a different dimensions. So tell us, it's our right to know. When you use energy with us, it's our right to know. So I told them, yes, I explained to them, this is the energy of sacred parspos and all that. And so they understood BioGeometry. And actually the people of Hamburg, when I was asked to make the second area in Hirschberg, because in Hamburg, we placed all the geometrical shapes, we placed them on facing the mobile towers. And the shapes we used, they're shapes, you know, shapes like this, like I have in the screen, like this, shapes like this that emit energy. So they were emitting energy towards the towers. So they wanted to make a solution for all of Switzerland, a total country solution. But they said, if we go in every place and put the shapes pointing to the towers, maybe people will understand or will say that mobile energy is harmful, and Ibrahim is correcting it.
Yeah.
So can you please find another way of doing it? Because if we make a total country project, don't use the towers. So I said, okay, this energy, instead of using hundreds of shapes in the towers, it was easier for me to carry this quality on the emanation of the mobile tower, so I can use less shapes.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
use it as carrier wave.
As a carrier thing.
Yeah.
So they told me, find another carrier thing. I told them, okay, I can use the energy of the earth. The earth itself can carry those waves. So we went in Hirschberg, and there's a central hill like that called Hirschberg, and then the whole valley of Appenzell, it's a radius of 10 kilometers all around with mountains at the end. So we went to the central spots and got the 12 big shapes like that, put them in plastic tubes, and put the plastic tubes in the ground. We filled them with water first to get the energy of life in there. And we buried them in the ground. We buried the 12 of them in the ground in this central spot. And it actually harmonized the whole valley from inside the earth. And that was the pilot project for the total Swiss solution. Well, we negotiated after that a contract for the total Swiss solution, but a lot of political problems came into there and all that. And I had, at that time, I left for Canada. I migrated to Canada, and so we didn't complete the total Swiss solution, but we had the prototype for it was done. Now, the good thing about BioGeometry is it combines the aspect of harmony coming from spirituality into the aspect of practicality. So, you know, when you speak about science, science is practical. You have practical applications. Spirituality is not practical. So to make both one, spirituality becomes practical, science accesses life force. So both of them meet, and there is no bridging science and spirituality because they're already one.
Okay.
And this kind of science is the science of universal harmonics that the ancients used in their great civilizations. And so we now have, after giving this long introduction, we now have a design language that we can actually use in all fields of life. I mean, until today, for the past 20 years, I've been supervising postgraduate works in many universities where we have all the laboratories doing our research, and that in all design fields you can think of, from town planning to architecture to furniture design to product design, even textile design or clothes design, whatever you can think of, landscape design, for years. And we have done a lot of work on the human brain, how we can actually create shapes that restore the chemical balance in the human brain. We have one doctor's degree where they tested on mice. They tested how geometrical shape can restore the serotonin level in the brain of depressed mice. We couldn't work on human beings because we started by, the student of mine went to one of the centers. We put a few shapes in one of the rooms, and we asked as a comparison that the patient in that room who had some form of the depression not be given any drugs in order to compare the effect of geometry with the effect of the other rooms where they gave them drugs. But we found that no center accepted to have a patient without giving him drugs. So when faced with this, we said, okay, maybe it's even better if we ask the university to make animal testing, because we would also overcome the placebo effect when you work on animals.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a result, we got the results. We raised the serotonin level. It's usually never 100 units. It's about 80, like that, because we have a lot of environmental pollution. So it's usually 80 levels in humans and animals. And when depressed, it goes down to maybe 30, something like that. So they made 4 groups. 3 of the groups were given the popular antidepressant drugs, and 1 group was put in an area where you had a biogeometry shape. And the biogeometry shape got the best results. Only 1 other drug was on the same level as biogeometry. The 2 other drugs were much less. And so we showed that with architecture or design, you could restore the chemical balance in the brain. And in the meantime, we have done architectural shapes that, like pavilions. I have one in my office in the garden. I have a pavilion, and that was a prototype for a large project, the classroom of a large project. And in this pavilion, you bring in autistic children, ADHD, all problems, problematic children. And what happens when they go in there, their perception starts to become normal. The pressure goes away, and they start becoming normal like people. And their parents would sit there and cry when they see the child changing his action and perception, or hyperactive child sitting and enjoying playing and drawing and doing things like that. And so we have shown that you can use architecture actually to change or to restore the well balance of the chemicals in the brain. We have carpets that do that. We have all kinds of designs. We have chairs, trays, and all kinds of things. Now, all our products have the same criteria, since they bring in the life force, access it, and put it in whatever you use it, and the human being interacts with it. He gets the life force, and this will give you an idea about how humanity can change all its products into living products, not dead products.
Yeah,
that's one of the main goals of biogeometry. For example, people are not aware today when they move an ancient statue or an obelisk from a sacred part and put it somewhere else because it's a nice place, or they move a temple because they want to take it away from the water of the Nile. They are taking something that is full of life force and putting it on a dead spot, and it becomes dead. It was alive for 5,000 years, and all of a sudden, because of our stupidity, it becomes a dead material building. So biogeometry is a vocation. It's a very important thing to save our humanity and give it a future, while at the same time, when you work in biogeometry, it becomes a process of initiation. Because, you know, any person who works in connecting the material to the spiritual, this form of work transforms the person doing it. So it becomes a form of initiation. And
so we, as an architect, we have a very responsible job.
Yes, but you know what? In ancient times, the architects knew that their job was sacred. They knew that when they built an ancient church or a temple, they didn't let a worker touch the stones unless he was purified and did certain purification rituals before he touched the stone. You know, for example, in Spain, Antonio Gaudi, he went into fasting before he built the church because he felt he wasn't prepared. He had to purify himself to build it. So architects in ancient times knew that architectural achievements were sort of talismans of initiation, where the ruler or the pharaoh, when he built a city, it was his act of initiation. When he built a pyramid, it was his act of initiation. But the way to do it was always connecting to the sacred power spot, connecting to life force. When you build a city, you have 4 or 5 or 10 sacred power spots. You go on those sacred power spots and put your important buildings on them, and then you connect the sacred power spots with the main avenues. So now you have this sacred energy flowing in your whole city, and from the main avenues you go to you use the earth radiation to spread it in the city. So the whole city becomes connected to the life force and becomes prosperous, becomes a prosperous city.
That brings me to some famous quotes from architects, like the most, because you give it a total different meaning and a more holistic approach, like from Bauhaus, form follows function.
Yes.
That sounds very logical. When you look at it, of course, it should fit for the purpose it is built. But it is only a snapshot in time.
But you know, function, the word function here.
So
yeah,
I call it
function can have many meanings.
Exactly. And so I often play with the words and I say, actually, it's not form follows function. It is function melts form, so that it stays adaptive to changing processes in those buildings. And Frank Lloyd Wright, he also the famous architect, he called it once, form and function should be one, joined in a spiritual union. So that comes close to what you say. And,
you see, the word spiritual union here gives a new dimension to function. Exactly. So function is multidimensional.
Exactly. And maybe Winston Churchill, with his famous quote, he said, first we build our buildings, and thereafter first we shape our buildings, and thereafter they shape us.
Yes.
So all of them, they had the feeling that form has an important role, not only containing the function or making the function possible, but there's a much bigger spiritual meaning to it. As I read somewhere that your quote, and you elaborate that already very, very eloquent, that energy and shape create function.
Yes, because if you
a little bit more
shape
about
energy, if you shape energy, you create function. Like if you have, you want to cook, you bring a pot, put it on the fire takes the shape of the pot, so the heat can actually cook the food. And using this same idea, how do you, a very simple way of opening the different functions or chakras of the body, you bring a shape, a bowl shape like that, and put it on every chakra of the body like a bowl shape, because the chakras, like fire, it will open around the bowl shape. It will like a flower. So if I take any shape that has a bowl like that, hemispherical shape, I put it on every chakra, the chakra will take its shape. So, and then automatically the chakra will open because the energy, you shape energy, you create function. So this is a very easy way. I take a teacup when I'm sitting and I put it on my head, I put it here and say, this is the lazy Egyptian way of opening the chakra.
Yeah, you hear also about sound balls, that they put the balls on the chakras and then make it vibrate.
Yes.
Even.
Here you are adding sound, but actually if you put the ball on the chakra, the shape will open the chakras straight away. So, you know, this example about the energy, I was once speaking at an international architecture conference in Alexandria. And I told them the problem of our modern architecture today, what we were missing. I told them, look, if you look at every great architecture in the world, actually the culture is different, but the process is always perfect, it's complete. So the process produces good architecture. I told them, imagine the process to be like a machine that makes sausage, you know. I tell them the process is like that. So you have one disk in it. For example, this is the disk of material. This is the disk of function. This is the disk of social aspect. So you have all the different disks in the sausage machine. One of the disks is subtle energy of the earth. This is also one of the disks. Now, you put whatever kind of meat you put here, you get the perfect sausage here because all the disks in there. I tell them, well, what happened is the boy cleaning the machine, while he opened it to clean it, the disk of energy of the earth fell out. He didn't notice it, it fell under the table, so he cleaned the machine and closed it. And then we came in our modern times and used that machine, not knowing that a disk fell out. And we keep putting sausage on one side or meat on one side, sausage comes out on the other side, and the sausage is never perfect. We think it's perfect, but it's never perfect because it's missing one of the little discs in there. So I told them, that's why one day in the future, somebody will find that disc, put it back in the machine, the energy disc, and perfect the sausage machine. And you say, oh, I'm sorry, all the sausage done before that was not perfect. And I tell them, if we look at this metaphor, you will understand that a future civilization will look at our great architecture and call us the dark ages of architecture. Mm-hmm. We can do fantastic things, fantastic stuff, fantastic architecture, but without the life force, we are in the dark age of architecture, because every bird species knows how to make its nest in a way that the nest sort of amplifies the life force. And every species, a snail does that. Every natural species knows how to build its home to amplify and protect its energy and correct it, except humans. We make our homes today, they're full of electromagnetic radiation, radioactivity, and all things like that. We have a couple of doctor's degrees where we use BioGeometry to cancel or reduce the effect of the radioactivity of building materials. Because people are not aware that in their homes there's radioactivity. Granite gives radioactivity, some textiles, give radioactivity. On the walls you have paint. Some paints give radioactive material. All kinds of ceramics sometimes give radioactivity. And we're not aware that we could be living in a radioactive environment and we think that we're safe. So it's not just electromagnetic radiation. So we have two papers that have been published in peer scientific magazines in the United States. One of them about electromagnetic radiation. The other one is about this weak radioactivity of building materials. And so by geometry, I find that it is important that humanity does not lose its connection to the higher forces of life and the higher dimensions. Otherwise, humanity will lose itself.
Yeah, actually it has two dimensions. The most important is that we as human beings should make personally that connection and not depending on external things, whatever they are. On the other hand, you prove that external things can help us to come in the right state, and maybe it takes some more time, But in the end, we also reach that state.
But you know, when you say we human beings should connect, the ancients didn't think that connecting in a practical way through doing work and objects and all that was one thing, and that personal connectivity through prayers and things like that was a different thing. No, they looked at both as one. You had one. Your actions, the way every activity you did was a connection. So it combined both things into one.
Okay, that brings me to your remark in the beginning that you said we are not living on the earth, we are living in the earth.
In it, yes.
So we are part of it. So that something similar could, metaphor we could use that a human body with all its cells, we are these cells, actually, we humans. But there's a bigger form around us. So we think we are just that one cell, now two cells are communicating with each other, but actually there's a much bigger thing going on. That
well, also, I'll give you another example that many people are not aware of. We live from the energy of the sun. Now, unfortunately, I can't go out in the balcony in the morning, open my mouth like this, and feed off the energy of the sun, you know. I don't have an organ that can transform it into chemical energy and all that. I can take it a bit in my skin, form vitamin D, but I cannot take it and transform it into chemical energy and to give me life force. So I'm missing an organ. Now, out there in nature, there's the plant. The plant is my missing organ. It is out there. It takes that energy, transforms it into chemical energy, and then I eat it, or the animals eat it, and we get the life force from the sun. We get it in our system. So actually, the plant out there is one of my organs, but it's situated outside my body. So I should look at it like that. I have organs in my body, and I have organs outside my body. So I am one. If I separate my body from the plants, I die. So you should look at it like that. In my lectures, I don't like to say how we interact with the environment. I always say we should reach a level where I say, I am the environment. That is the reality. We are part of this. We are one with it. You see, like you said, in the body, an immune cell cannot speak of itself as if it's a separate entity, forgetting that it's living inside me, you know. And now, let's look at something about our actions. Since we're speaking about cells, on my hand here, there are so many little bacteria, thousands and thousands in every square inch, that it's like a community doing work. One takes care of this part of the skin, one takes care of that. It's a whole nation working on every square centimeter in my hand. Now, if they stop working and start doing their own thing, their politics or whatever it is, I will find that my skin starts itching or something is happening in the skin. So what do I do if my skin itches? I scratch. Now, when I scratch, I kill about 2,000 of those bacteria. So humanity should beware, because one day this great being, the earth, can scratch, and bye-bye humanity. You see? Yeah.
So, indeed. So I think an important step in this is bringing awareness. So broaden our perspective and our horizon. That when you look at it from this standpoint, it gives a complete different dimensions. That we are not single persons doing our thing. We are one big organism. Suppose I bring a little bit back to the topic of so more in detail the application for a university campus. That's also an ecosystem in itself.
You mean a university campus?
in university campus. So
okay.
Study and work environment.
Yes.
A ecosystem in itself. So you are a professor yourself. You worked, are still working at universities. What could biogeometry do to enhance the study results of students, and to enhance the health and well-being, and probably even the consciousness, and also the people, the staff and the professors who are involved?
Well, let's look at teaching to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Science, the definition of science is actually observation. Nothing more than just observation. If you see a phenomena, you just observe what are the steps that lead to that phenomena. So science is just observing the phenomena happening around you. And by observing, you get to know things. So science is knowledge through observation. It's very simple. Now, unfortunately, we became completely, let's say, in love with our modern technology. And so we changed the definition of science into what I can measure with my instruments is science, and what I cannot measure is not scientific.
Yeah.
And this is a huge mistake, because energy, the definition is the ability to make an effect, to produce an effect. So if I look at observation, the original concept of science, then your thoughts are energy, your feelings are energy, your actions are energy, your movements are energy. But if I'm trying to measure everything with devices that I invented, and then I'm so happy with my device that whatever it cannot measure does not exist. So all of a sudden now, my device cannot measure your emotions or your thoughts coming out of your mind. So it is not energy, you know, forget about it. It's humanities. So science, what is doing is closing itself from nature, from the environment, by doing this, by sticking to what it can measure only. Now, going to universities, I was once in a think tank with one of the biggest, let's say, medical institutions in the world, and one of the biggest universities, and we were sitting there discussing. And while talking, a person was showing statistics about the medical department, and he showed that students entering the first year of medicine, the student had 40% of the students had knowledge about nutrition and lifestyle and health. 40% of the students had good knowledge of that. Those students went in to become doctors and then specialists and all that. And then when they became specialists after 7 years, they did the same statistical analysis, and they found that only 20% now had knowledge of those things. So my reaction was, after the speaker finished, I told him, I see something very dangerous now in our institutions. I see that teaching actually puts a barrier to knowledge. And if our university teaching puts barrier to knowledge, because every department, the more you specialize, the more you push things out, it's a very dangerous situation. We must make a university teaching that opens the people to observation of nature, to observation of things, to understanding, because science is observation, and not get them stuck only to what I measure and what I don't measure and all that. So they were shocked a bit when I said that. And I said, I didn't say anything. It's your statistics. On the board, the statistics show that. Now, what we want to do in a university environment, first of all, imagine that I use BioGeometry to build the university or to modify an existing building. It's the same. What will happen? First, the background energy will be less stressful. When people are relieved of inner stress, first of all, what happens when the environment is healthy? A lot of the chronic diseases disappear. Because people don't know that chronic diseases that we cannot cure, we can only manage, have their cause in the environment. Like things, all the things like people are getting diabetes, we don't know why. You're getting high blood pressure, you don't know why. You're getting this. Many things can be managed because the cause lies out there in the environment and we're not looking for the cause. So if I make a healthy environment, you will have people there entering an environment with no stress. With no stress, that means they are relieved, their emotional, mental aspects open. And when we put BioGeometry, we are connecting them to life force. So we're opening the students, besides the knowledge that they're being taught, we're opening them to experience experiential knowledge, things that they can experience. And the building is helping with that in providing the energy that will make you all of a sudden creative, that will make you think, that will make you that. Because like I told you in all our research, we can use BioGeometry to bring back the chemical balance in the brain. And this, I think, is the most important aspect in a university, is bringing the chemical balance in the brain of the people who go in this very special institution. And this is BioGeometry. This is what BioGeometry can do.
Exactly. When I say my words, so by rebalancing and harmonizing the energy in that environment, that university environment, stress levels go down, and also the fight and flight response of people go down. So they will be automatically, because they're at ease, more open-minded. And
more receptive, yes.
Exactly. And that goes two ways. It's only not the students, but also the professors and the staff. So probably something similar as, or maybe the same, as in one of those Swiss towns where the spirituality level went up. So just by treating the environment in a university campus, that would
we can change all that.
That would be a great experiment, I think, when we could find
it. You know, in every a university is like a big company, you know, and you will always find when the energy is a bit stressful, you will find that the interpersonal relationships of the staff together, of the students together, and all that, you will always have problems between students, problems between staff, and all that. And if by using BioGeometry, we can reduce those problems, we can reduce sick leaves, for example, we can reduce those things, I think that universities will become utopias for the future.
I agree with that. So I'm playing with the thought to start a pilot project for this. I'm contacting some university in the UK to do that. So proof is the best argument. So just it's working. So.
We don't have to, you know, we don't have to build a new campus.
No, exactly.
If a university is open to it, we go and transform the existing campus.
Exactly.
Because in BioGeometry, shapes enter into resonance like musical strings.
Yeah.
So if you cannot modify a big shape of a building, you can put a small shape of a building in the right proportions and make it resonate with the big shape and introduce harmony in it.
Exactly.
So by BioGeometry, we have many, many possibilities of doing such things.
Yeah.
And I think your idea of doing something with the university would be really opening a path to the future.
Exactly, that's also my thing, because who has the youth has the future. So we are training our youth over there. They have to take over from us after some time.
Yes, that's our
and
future.
Actually,
yes.
per definition, a university environment should be the perfect environment, because they should be open-minded, because that's the university.
You see, it's very simple. When you approach a university, you can make a research project. Mm-hmm. For example, we say, we are going to make a pilot project for 3 months.
Exactly.
Install things for 3 months,
yeah,
and evaluate before and after. You know why I only say for 3 months and then take it off to evaluate? Because people usually, when everything becomes better, sometimes we take it for granted.
Yes, 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 yes.
You know, when you feel better, you never think that there's a reason you feel better. Yeah. You take it for granted.
Yeah.
So they will only feel what BioGeometry did for them when after 3 months, go and take away the shapes.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I've noticed that when I did especially projects in hospitals, I take the things away and they comment, how come you take the things away? You know, now all the people are feeling bad again and all that. I told them. So, you know, so it's good to put the solution and say, this is a pilot project.
Yes.
Then you take it away, see what happens. And then if they want a permanent solution, that's the second step.
Exactly.
This is the right way to convince people of what BioGeometry can do.
Exactly. And that will give, I think, a huge example for other universities. Probably you have the same experience with hospitals. So when they experience a difference,
yes. Well, I have the experience with human beings in like places like Hirschberg and Hamburg. Of course, I have done many projects in the Middle East, but with governments. And these projects are high security projects I cannot speak about. But we've had lots of experiences with companies who had staff problems between their staff, and we worked on it. So we have lots of experience in bringing back the proper atmosphere in a place. And any new project, for example, when we speak about university, the good thing is we have done so many animal farming projects. So because animal farming projects, they really, for example, show that there is no placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll tell you a nice little funny story. We were sitting in Switzerland and in a big conference about Hamburg. And the people of Hamburg were sitting there, and some professors were sitting there. And then a professor of psychology, he asked to speak. And then he said, you know, all this BioGeometry is nonsense because there's no science behind it. This Dr. Ibrahim Karim is an Egyptian. And the Egyptians have those ancient magical sciences, you know, in their temples and all those things. Mm. And it is known that if people have a very advanced science, they can use a sort of hypnotism, but on a mass scale. Mm. And he can go into a place and everybody becomes healthy because he hypnotized everybody, everybody becomes healthy. And then he says, this is BioGeometry. BioGeometry is a cover. Mm-hmm. Because I know there could exist people with these abilities. And since now you say he's Egyptian, so he must have abilities like that.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I was saying, I won't answer. I don't want to enter with him into a discussion. But then an old lady from Hamburg raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, sir, do you think that our cows speak Arabic?" He got so embarrassed because she was saying, "Our cows got healthier, the plants got healthier."
Yeah.
It was, "Do you think he speaks Arabic to those?" You know?
Yeah.
And this was a funny thing. It shows that really plants and animals and all that, they are showing that there is no placebo effect here.
Mm-hmm.
And placebo effects usually, they're very strong in the beginning, and then they start fading away. Biogeometry effects, they start slowly, and they keep increasing with time, because more resonance happens, until they reach a state where they reached a level, and this level becomes the permanent state. And this stays all the time, it doesn't change. Hamburg and Hirschberg are working now. I was there last month. I was in Hirschberg, and I went there to check. They wanted me to see if everything was good with 5G and all that. And we went to check Hirschberg and Hamburg, and everything was good. After so many, Hamburg was 2003, Hirschberg 2007. And they're still energetically very sound till today, even with 5G. So this is the difference between when you put an energy solution there and all sorts of, there's no magic, you know, in science, there's no magic, because magic is something that you do not understand.
Exactly.
But once you understand it, it becomes science. It's not magic. There's no magic anywhere. The ancient Egyptians didn't use magic. They used science. All the great ancient civilizations used science and not magic.
Yeah, and indeed. And when you don't understand something, it is sometimes fearful, and you're feeling not safe. But on the other hand, you say, people believe in instruments. When you can measure it, then it exists. When you don't can measure it, it does not exist. But when people say something like this to me, I tell them, do you remember last time when you felt in love, or maybe you're still in love? When that happened, did you go to a doctor and ask the doctor, please do a test, because I'm not sure if I'm in love?
I'm not sure if I'm in love, yes.
Nobody does that. So there are fields that we dare to trust our feelings, and that those things that are not measurable. And but actually, a lot of important decisions are made just on that feeling. Even wars are.
Science, proper science, should be able to address all those things and measure them.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be open-minded. First, I should understand that when you are in love, something is happening. Mm-hmm. And anything that produces an effect is energy. So love is energy. So why don't I extend the borders of my science to embrace all types of energy?
Yes.
This would take us into a science of the future. And the physics of quality in biogeometry does exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would also be very, I think, interesting when we do such a pilot project in a university, that some of their own faculties get involved in the testing, actually let them test. Of course,
yes. We can make every faculty use, according to its way of thinking, according to its possibilities, they can come into the project, and we can have a multidisciplinary
that's what I'm pointing at.
Assessment. Yes, this would be very interesting.
Yes. When there are engineers and psychology and medical, whatever they have.
Everybody can assess his own way. Yes.
Exactly, and they can test it in their own environment, and let's see what happens with the awareness after that. I interviewed a former professor in London, from the London University, in September, and he said something. Then he did a lot of testing in his career. He is into dowsing and radionics. He was the former chairman of the Radionic Association in the UK. And he said, yeah, we did a lot of testing, but there were colleagues, and everything was probably done, scientifically proven, gold standard method, everything was okay. And they didn't want to believe it. They just put it aside. So you have to be open-minded.
You know, the good thing about biogeometry is I don't ask people to believe. I just ask, do you have a problem? Bring it. If I solve it, ask me what biogeometry is all about. Mm-hmm. If I don't solve it, just tell me go home, you know. This is it. But biogeometry is here for practical solutions. Mm-hmm. And imagine when we are speaking about all those things we're speaking about, but we have the ability to show it straight away with results. So we don't enter into theorizing or philosophy or whatever. This is not our field. You know, I'm an engineer. What we do is practical. And the ancient civilizations, you know, there's one thing. When we look at ancient civilizations, we look at their symbols, at their things and all that, and we try always to look at them in a symbolic way, using modern philosophy and modern psychology in a symbolic way. What we don't know, those people had no time for philosophy and psychology and symbolism. Mm-hmm. Those people were doing practical things. Mm-hmm. So when they did a symbol, you should ask yourself, is this a device? And what does this device do? But we tend to go, this represents that and represents that. No, they had no time to represent things. Mm-hmm. They only did practical things in their lives. So every symbol that they did, every word, everything they did was practical. And if we understand that, then we will understand how great those civilizations were. Unfortunately, we tend to go into symbolism and things like that, and think magic and think all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And we'll never understand the ancient sciences if we keep thinking that way.
Mm-hmm. When one of our listeners is so fascinated about this sharing of information and practical knowledge, and says, I would like to try it out or to use it in my university campus. What would you suggest would be the first step? Where to start? What to do?
Well, first of all, is let us convince the administration of the university that we would like to make a research project for 3 months. Now, this research project for 3 months would be free of charge. It's just a research project that we are doing for ourselves. And in this case, I will bring, for this project, I will bring enough shapes, geometrical shapes and all that. I'll bring all the tools needed for our pilot project, let's say for 3 months. And then we put the solution, and then we will have a questionnaire. Mm-hmm. The questionnaire will be done before and after we put our solution. So we'll take the questionnaire. There will be a group of students who know how to use questionnaires in a very neutral way, not to try to influence people. And they will go and pick, let's say, 50 or 100 students, different whatever. And they ask them fill in the questionnaire about everything, about their health, about their way of thinking, about everything, their happiness, their aggression, their feeling, everything. And then we will have also questionnaire for some of the professors observing what's happening. Mm-hmm. And they will have questionnaires with all the problems. Then we do our work. And after 3 months, we go and they will do the same questionnaire again, observing, showing the difference. Now, if they see that we have really made a difference in that university, Then we can sit, make a conference, sit, explain what we did, and talk, and then think of how to apply a total solution to the university where they will pay our fees. The first solution will be a simplified solution so that it doesn't cost us a lot. Maybe we decide to take part of the university or something. We'll design the product according to the size and all that. We'll design it, but I'm ready to bring my team and sort of make a pilot project with the university. And we'll see what happens afterwards, because it will be a very good assessment. I mean, here in my universities in Egypt, and I also did with the university in Vienna and all that, I did lots of master's and doctor's degrees, but we didn't do the buildings of the university.
Exactly, that's
Yes, the status of biogeometry, we have a very good academical status with many universities now for 20 years, but we didn't do the buildings. We just did the research projects. Maybe it's time we go and do the building of university to show what we can do towards the future of the people.
Exactly, and I would expand it a little bit, that not only the buildings in the way of physical environment, but also the digital and the social part.
Yes, of course, yes.
And so the whole set, the whole ecosystem, that would be really, really something. And thank you for your offer. I'm sure we are going to do this in the near future.
Because you know, Rene, it's like you caught me, you put me in a corner, because when you speak about universities, we're speaking about the future of the world.
Exactly.
These are our children that will lead into the future. And even if we do just one university, not more, this university will be like a light beacon that with time will pull the others behind it.
Actually,
so it's a very good idea what you are saying.
And those students are not average human beings. They will come on very influential posts in later life. So
and you know, here university would not be building just people who know a lot about a certain specialization.
Yes.
No, they will build people who actually are more human, because we are going to change the way they think. The problem of specialized studies is, with time you specialize more and more and more. So you start thinking, I know everything about some very little aspect. And then you have a huge ego, but in a very limited field, and you don't see anything outside it. But when you open those people to a much bigger dimension, what happens is they will feel more human. Even their egos will get smaller. They'll feel more human. They will feel that now they interact with others with pleasure. You know, this interaction with people, this peaceful interaction, this happy interaction, not closed by a scientific ego that puts them in a certain pedestal.
Actually, the way I see it is more that we don't take something away. We just bring things back into harmony. So it is. I just wrote an article about architecture as a symphony of form. So playing with the frozen music idea from Schiller. That bringing it back into harmony in all the components is just like when you go to a classical concert. Just the first 3 minutes is noise when they are tuning their instruments. But when the conductor comes and they have the music score, then all of a sudden is harmony, because that's coordinated. So that's how I see such a ecosystem as a university. When you bring it back into harmony, because you tune into that higher frequency, the music score, and there is a conductor who says, okay, now we play together.
You know, what we could do is, after we do the first pilot project, then we take the different departments of the university and make a project with each department. For example, the architectural students will design the ideal university with BioGeometry, even if it will never be built, but they will design it. The others will design the furniture for such university. The others will compose the music for such university, like we have the musical compositions, like the Serious Odyssey that we have, that energizing, that creates a lot of balance and all that. Mm-hmm. So every department will have like a side project creating a BioGeometry environment through its specialty, so that they, at least, even if they don't build this future university, but at least they design a utopian idea university, even if it's kept in textbooks. At least they've done it, and it will always be in the universal mind.
Exactly. So I'm so grateful for your time and your explanation, and especially
I'm happy to be with you. We've gone 2 hours now. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, what shall I say? When I start a new topic, we add another hour. So let me close up that by thanking you really, really very, very much.
Thank you, Rene, and hope to see you soon sometime.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.